Hello, hello, hello. What's good? It's your boy. Oh boy. Let me make sure I get my faculty in order. Really? Like, it's mine. Why can't I have it right there? Never ever happens that way, does it? Well then, it's your boy, rather grown man, Ralph Anthony Garcia, also known as R4, the Regal Royal, the Regal, the Royal, the Regal, the Regal, the Royal, the Legal, the Loyal, the Regal, the Royal, Ronan Ralph. Yeah, I'm a little tired, but we're still doing this tonight. Welcome to another edition of Ralph Reads Raw. Without further ado, big shout out to the folks. 704 Liquor House Talk Network. Salute, grand rising to you. And big up to the folks, the shareholders. Sweet D, I've been the healer, Maria da Silva. J Knox SG CEO, Cynthia, Chadwick Rucker, Alasia Ross, Stanislava Cardona, Monster, Lost Roads, Keith Woods, C's All the Time, K-Town, Trey Noel, Jamie Pearson, Just Being Kiki, Tweety, Sherelle 5150, Tequila Green, CJ, Mr. Light, J Bobo, Goose Jack, Deswan Manuel, The Fort, Lady Rain, Pretty Ricky 22, Desmond Thomas, Dario Carrington, Marcus Valentine, Kala Isla and the Isla family, BLE 007, Michael Woodford, Pat Master OST, Anthony Leach, Calm, Nana James, Tama, Mr. Full Time, Brian Latham, Mr. T, Jahlogic and Friends, and finally Demon Wolf 570. Let's get the show on the road. And yes, the shirt you see is so nice, I wore it thrice. This is my merch. And as you can see, it is beautiful. I got shirts, I got long shirts, and I also got hoodies. Alright? Show your boy some love. Show your boy some love. Alright? And order yours today. Holla at me on my DMs and let's make something happen. 704 Liquor House Talk Network. Welcome to the Ronin Gang. Now, you are a shareholder. Thank you kindly for your donation. You are fully appreciated. Now then, let's go right to the show. Alright, let's do this. Chapter 17. After arriving on schedule, Billy picked up the money and departed. He carried the giant bankroll in the briefcase. Seeing all the money Billy had stuffed into the briefcase made Earl relax a little about the investment. He tried not to worry, but it was his last money, and for some reason, uneasiness rode with him. He glanced at his arm for the time of day and cursed when he realized that he had to pawn his watch. He had to call the desk to get the time, and that didn't help his temper. Earl ordered a pint of whiskey from the bar. The night went by slowly. It didn't take this long to grow dope, he thought. He began to wish he hadn't got down on this one. Wished that he hadn't been so impulsive. Again, he wished he hadn't pawned his diamonds. Somebody knocked on his door. Earl jumped to his feet and rushed to the door. Earl jumped to his feet and rushed to the door. Carl grinned. "What's going on, man? You letting friends in tonight?" Earl stepped back to let him enter. Carl waited until Earl had closed the door and asked, "Have you heard from Billy yet?" Earl shook his head. Is that what got you? Have you heard from Billy yet? Earl shook his head. Is that what got you so nervous, Carl? Carl paced up and down the room. I got $5,000 out in the wind, man. Don't you think that's enough to be sweating about? Yeah, baby, Earl agreed readily. I ain't got that much tied up. But what's out in the wind, man, is sure enough my very goddamn last. He flashed his wrist. Dropping down in a chair, Carl replied, You know damn well that wasn't your last money, Earl. Earl waved his arm to display its nakedness. You think I'd pawn my shit if I had some cash, man? Carl changed to sensitive subject. How have the whores been treating you, baby? This was even more sensitive and caused Earl to snap. You keep your goddamn ear to the ground, Carl. You know as well as I do that whenever a new whore shows up, that funky bitch Faye puts mud all over my name or scares the bitch some kind of fucking way. Carl shrugged. I heard that crap she's supposed to be telling all the young whores, but I know you ain't letting that junk hold you back. It don't, Earl admitted. It's just that good whores don't grow on trees. If they were that easy to get, everyone would have one or two. Carl nodded in agreement. The two men sat sipping their whiskey and whiled the slow-moving night away. And whiled the slow moving night away by discussing various ladies of the night. After leaving Earl, Billy and Duke drive him straight across town. He parked down the street from an expensive hotel. You sure you don't want me to go inside with you, Billy? That's a hell of a lot of money you're carrying, man. Billy looked at his friend. Nah, Duke, it ain't necessary. These are white boys I'm doing business with. When it comes to $25,000, Billy, it don't make no difference. White boys, black boys, either would kill Jesus for that kind of cash, baby. Don't worry, Billy said, punching him lightly on the arm. Big boys, Duke, always respect each other. Duke pulled his coat back and removed a snub-nosed .38. Take this with you. This is something else the big guys respect, too. Billy took both gun and holster and jammed them down into his belt. A little insurance never hurt, he reasoned. It had been his intention to get the pistol from Duke before he left the car, but he didn't mention this fact to his close friend. I'm glad you're looking out for me, Mello, Billy said with a grin, opening the car door. Duke started to ask again, but stopped. Don't worry, Billy remarked, seeing the look of concern on his friend's face. He leaned down to the car window and covered up the butt of the gun. These white boys don't know what's happening, man. With our outlet, Duke, we might tear off close to 300,000, boy. He winked, and Duke watched him walk away. Billy stopped as he started to depart from the elevator and allowed an elderly mink-coated lady with her poodle to go first. She smiled her thanks to the neatly dressed Negro male. He's attractive, even though he's dark, she thought. He's attractive, even though he's dark, she thought, and continued down the hall. Billy stopped at the first door on his right and knocked. He had called up from the lobby, but they still opened the door on a chain. An eye peeped out, studied Billy carefully. Then the door opened and he stepped into the room. A tall, dark-complexioned Italian greeted him. "Billy boy, I'm really glad to see you. Looks like you're gaining weight right around the middle," he said, looking at the bulge the 38 made. "Well, Tony, you know how this business goes. That's one place you better gain some weight at." Tony sneered. He pulled his coat open. "You see how clean I am? It's just a way to show that I think I'm doing business with my friends." Billy jerked his head at the doorman. "I guess he's just as clean." Tony looked annoyed. "You gotta trust somebody, man." "I do," Billy answered flatly. He tossed his briefcase on the table. "Let's get down to business. I got people waiting." Tony opened the briefcase and Billy stuck out his hand, stopping him from dumping the money out on the table. "I come to do business, Tony, not bullshit. Let me see some dope." Neither man really trusted the other, and they eyed each other with hostility. Billy removed a small paper bag from his pocket. "What's that you got there?" Tony asked curiously. "It's mix for the dope, if you ever come up with some." Tony shook his head. I don't know if we got time for all that shit." "My money spends anywhere, Tony. You got time to do everything else. I know you can find time for me to check what I'm buying." Billy measured 8 small amounts on the table, like 8 separate anthills. "You said it would take 10 cuts, Tony. I'm not going to put but 8 on it. If it takes that, I'll be happy." Tony pulled the package from his pocket. "This dope here will take 8 plus some," he said, tossing the package on the table. Billy examined the small pack closely. "I'm supposed to be getting 2 kilos of stuff, man. 12,500 a pack." Another pack fell on the table. "You can't test but one at a time, can you?" Billy picked up the last pack. I don't have to test but one." He quickly made a small hole in the package. With deft motions, he filled a spoon with dope and smoothed it out. He produced a small strainer and dropped dope and mix into it together. He slowly sprinkled the mixture back onto the table. Someone knocked on the door lightly. Billy glanced up, annoyed. "What the fuck is happening? What the fuck's happening?" he asked sharply. "It's Mike," the doorman yelled. Tony took a peek at Billy, then said, "Let him in. He's all right." Billy had to hold himself in check. He didn't like it, but it wasn't his place to complain. but it wasn't his place to complain. His anger quickly grew to alarm. The man called Mike entered, followed closely by two large, hard-faced men. "What the fuck is going on here, Tony?" Billy asked sharply. The words were hardly out of his mouth before the three men produced pistols. Mike stepped forward. "Just keep your mouth shut, boy, and everything will be all right." He waved his gun in Billy's direction. "That way, nigger, you might live to tell somebody what happened." Billy glanced around, bewildered. All the money he had collected from the different people was not Tony's concern. It was his alone. They would never believe he got ripped off. Plus, all the money he had saved for the past year was tied up in this deal. He analyzed the situation quickly, and his anger overrode his caution. "You son of a bitch," he said to Tony. "Don't think I'm gonna buy this shit or accept it." Tony gestured helplessness with his hands. "I ain't got nothing to do with this, Billy. You gotta believe me, man." Mike pushed his gun under Billy's nose and picked up the briefcase. He then reached across the table and picked up the package of dope. Billy's eyes had become mere slits as he stared at Tony. "I ain't the one who has to believe this shit, Tony. I'm calling New York, mister, and we'll see if the big man believes you." Tony turned pale, and his hands started to shake. Mike silently began to screw on a silencer to his pistol. Billy's eyes opened wide in horror. He stared at the silencer. He stared at the silencer. He stared at the silencer as though he couldn't believe what he saw. He had never been a coward, and now, knowing that he was about to die, he gambled everything. Desperately, he made his move. Pushing the table towards Mike, he reached for his gun. Pain exploded in his chest, and Billy fell to the floor, his gun still tucked into his waistband. Tony stared down at the Negro on the floor. Awareness of what had happened, or what he had allowed to happen, came to him in a rush. Billy had been well thought of by the boss man. His anger turned towards Mike. "What the hell ever made you go and kill him for?" he yelled. "There was no killing mentioned in the deal." Mike shrugged his wide shoulders. He was tall and lean, with pale blue eyes. "That boy was going to cause us a lot of trouble, Tony, about the money." "But murder?" Tony managed to sputter. His eyes followed the pistol that Mike raised and pointed directly at his stomach. I understand what you mean, Mike," Tony muttered as he stared at the gun. "I understand," Tony muttered as he stared at the gun. "I understand now. We couldn't have done it any other way, Mike. And besides, who gives a damn about a nigger?" He tried to grin and laugh it off. Mike stared without blinking. His eyes held the same coldness. His eyes held the same coldness that a reptile's eyes would have. "I figured you would understand, Tony," he said, and he pulled the trigger. Tony staggered back, holding his hands to his stomach. There was fear in his dark eyes as he stared around the room in helpless pain. "Help me! Somebody!" he begged as the gun spit fire again. The doorman backed up towards the door. "You know me, Mike. I'm with you guys all the way." Mike nodded in agreement. "I know you are, boy. Don't worry about a thing." One of Mike's henchmen stepped from the restroom. He had screwed on a silencer too. He waited for Mike to give him the go-ahead. Mike nodded. The gun in the man's hand spit fire, and the doorman fell against the wall, then slid down on the floor. The gunman walked over and put the gun against his head and pulled the trigger again. As Mike started for the door with the briefcase under his arm, the phone rang. "Maybe one of them guys will answer it," he said laughingly as he closed the door to the apartment and walked quickly down the hall. Inside the room, Tony rolled over and reached for the cord. The phone rang shrilly in his ear. He pulled the cord and the phone came tumbling down to the floor. He grabbed the receiver and clutched it firmly. "What's going on over there?" a strong voice asked. "Boss," he managed to mutter. "Get Mike Nelson." The phone slipped away from his grasp. On the other end of the line, a man held a receiver and listened silently. He pointed his finger at two young men sitting in his office. Catch a plane. Get over there and see what happened." He fell silent for a second, then added, It might just be a small problem. It just might be a small problem came up. Find out where Mike Nelson's holed up. It's just possible he might have stepped out of line. If so, I want you to hang that blue-eyed bastard's ass to dry. I want you to hang that blue-eyed devil bastard's ass up to dry. All right, folks, let me take a pause for the calls. Say what up. Pat Master, OST in the house saying God bless you. And of course, 704 Liquor House Talk Network, our newest shareholder. And now for the last chapter of this magnificent book. Let's go. Chapter 18. The door banged as though someone were trying to break it down. Earl rolled out of bed and glared. "God damn it! I'm coming! Don't knock the fucking thing down!" He opened the door and cursed. "Damn it, Carl! I just got rid of your ass 2 hours. I just got rid of your ass 2 hours ago. Why don't you go home and sleep? I ain't got your money." Carl pushed his way into the room. His shoulders slumped as though carrying a heavy weight. Something about his mood brought a warning to Earl, and the hot words on his tongue were not spoken. What is it, man?" he asked. "I told you before I left here this morning, Earl. I felt like something had happened." His words shocked Earl, and he listened in silence. "It was on the radio this morning, man. Names and everything." Earl walked over to the radio and flipped the switch. Loud soul music filled the room. He turned the sound down slightly. "You heard from Duke, man?" For an answer, Carl shook his head. "Yeah, man, but he don't know nothing. He says he been sitting in the car all night waiting for Billy to come back. He just happened to turn on the radio and heard the news this morning." Earl shook his head. "This wipes me out, Carl. I'm busted completely." "Well, at least you're still living, Earl. It's all over for Billy. All you have to do is keep on stepping and you'll break the ice sooner or later." Earl laughed harshly. I guess you got something there. Billy sure ain't got no comeback if he's really dead." Earl rubbed his chin thoughtfully. I could say I shouldn't complain because I'm still living, but baby, if you only knew how feeble, if you only knew how feeble. The radio began to blare out the news, so Earl fell silent. A fire on the west side of town had taken the lives of 6 kids while the mother was next door visiting a sick elderly woman. 3 new gangland killings have been discovered, and Earl and Carl listened without understanding. Mike Nelson, a notorious gangster from New York, had been found murdered with 2 companions in an uptown motel. Pistols with silencers on them have been found on the murdered men, and the police believe these had been used in the vicious killing of 2 white men and 1 Negro male sometime earlier this morning. The announcer continued with some speculation as to why the killings had occurred, but finished by stating the police believed it was a drug-related it was a drug but finished by stating the police believed it was a drug-related case because of the black male, who was well known to the narcotics department as a big supplier of drugs in the city. The following days passed slowly for Earl. He was so disgusted that he refused to pick up the small amounts of money Brenda had promised him when she got paid. He didn't even stop in the restaurant. She called him on the phone, but she called him on the phone, but he only hung up in a drunken rage. His appearance became sloppy as he moved around like a man in a daze. At night, Earl would stagger from one bar to another. People who knew him shook their heads in wonder. Some mornings, after the night spots had closed, Earl would stagger up and down the streets, going to different corn whiskey joints until dawn found him unable to remember where he was. Then someone would take him home. The girls on 12th and John R. would gossip about how much he must have loved Vicky. Very few people realized that the loss of his bankroll was what had really turned him around. Prostitutes standing in dimly lit doorways whispered among themselves nightly as they watched him stagger from cellar bars to alleyways where he would stand and drink wine with the bums and wineheads. Connie cried silently to herself at times when Earl would stumble past her on the streets, too drunk to recognize her. His Cadillac would stay parked in the same place for days. Connie began to take the car home some mornings and bring it back later in the evening. She removed the car notebook from the glove compartment and discovered he was behind in his payments. She quickly paid his notes up to date. She also stopped by the hotel and found he hadn't paid his rent in over a month. The manager knew Earl and thought, like everybody else, that the loss of Vicky had just been too much for the young man. Connie paid the back rent and asked for the key. She realized he was so happy to receive the rent money that he would have given her the key to the hotel. He could have padlocked Earl's room for the rent, since he hadn't. She was thankful. Since he hadn't, she was thankful. Connie unlocked Earl's room and stepped in. Wine and empty whiskey bottles were scattered around the room. Earl, fully dressed, was lying across the bed. The acid smell of vomit filled her nostrils. She quickly opened the window, then She quickly opened the window and struggled with her stomach as she began to clean up the mess. Earl moaned once or twice while she worked, and she glanced worriedly at him. She was more anxious about his health than anything else. She knew what people dared to whisper. With Billy's death, Earl had blown everything. She had gotten it straight from Carl. She had gotten it straight from Carl. She went to the bathroom and started his shower. After adjusting the water, she returned and, with quiet determination, began trying to get Earl undressed. With the utmost patience, she finally got him down to his shorts and undershirt. She half carried and half dragged him to the shower, pushing him under the cold water. I'll be damned, Earl cursed, jumping from under the cold water with anger. Connie slipped out of her clothes. She pulled Earl from the wall where he stood cursing, and pushed him back under the water. Stand still, Earl. Stand still, Earl, she yelled. You gonna get my hair all wet, nigga. Despite his being drunk, she was having a time holding him under the water. He stopped struggling and swore. He stopped struggling and swore. Woman, what the fuck are you doing here? And what's the idea of you coming in here and trying to drown me? He noticed her trying to keep her head out from under the water, and he pushed it under the strong steam. At least, bitch, you could have taken my shorts off. Later, the couple sat on the bed and laughed and played. Their mood was gay, and worries were put away and forgotten for the moment. Well, at least you're starting to look like a man again, Connie stated happily. Earl smiled at her in return. You're the bitch who's been stealing my car every morning, ain't you? Connie looked surprised. I didn't know you knew I've been taking it. Earl laughed lightly, despite what people have been saying. I ain't crazy. She raised her arms and stretched. Earl was beside her, and his words were like a caress. I made a mistake before, Connie, but I'm asking you from the bottom of my heart. Have you come back home? The bathtub. The bath towel slipped from her body as she turned and pressed herself against him. I've never given myself to a man, honey, unless he was mine. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You taught me that, Earl. Don't you remember? With these words, she melted into his arms. Evening came and went. Now night had silently moved in. The couple began to stir on the bed restlessly. It's been like a honeymoon, baby. It's been like a honeymoon, baby, Connie whispered. Her eyes sparkled with the awareness of knowing that she had been well loved. Of knowing. One second, y'all. Evening came and went. Now night had silently moved in. The couple began to stir on the bed the couple began to stir on the bed restlessly. It's been like a honeymoon, baby, Connie whispered. Her eyes sparkled with the awareness of knowing that she had been well loved. She seemed to drift when she left the bed. She removed one of the few remaining suits of Earl's from the closet. She removed one of the few remaining suits of Earl's from the closet. She walked to the dresser and got a spotless white shirt. I want you to look good tonight, Daddy. I want them whores to see what a real pimp looks like. I ain't been wearing my suits, Connie, 'cause my jewelry is in the pawn shop. I feel underdressed. I feel underdressed with a suit on and no diamonds. Connie laughed and opened her pocketbook. She removed his ring and watch. I didn't have enough to get your stick pin, Daddy, but it won't take long. Earl stared at her without speaking. He took her into his arms. You sure enough got the love I need, woman. You can't even stand to see me hurt myself. You can't even stand to see me hurt myself. He hugged her tightly. When he got dressed, he slipped his jewelry on and turned for her approval. Oh, baby, she murmured. You're the only real pimp in this town, Daddy, and I hope you never let these whores forget it. They walked out of the hotel together with an air of extravagance. People strolling by stopped and watched the couple enter the Cadillac. Two men watched a big car pull away from the curb. It's just... One second. Come on. I apologize for this delay. I can't record with that happening. Hurry up. The benefits of living near a damn hospital. Okay. Finally. Still going. Okay. God damn it, these fucking sirens. Two men watched a... Really? Two men watched... Oh, this is unbelievable. Two men watched a big car pull away from the curb. It's just like I always said, one of the men remarked. If you take his whores away, a pimp won't even be able to pay his own rent. I don't know, the other man replied. Earl had a bad break, but he still didn't blow his hog. Earl turned the corner and started down the street of broken dreams. He stopped long enough to let the top down on his car. Then continued down the street slowly. Hi, Connie. A girl yelled from the darkened doorway. Connie waved at different... Connie waved at different girls standing out on the streets working. You coming to work tonight, Connie? A tall, slender girl asked. I might come down later. I might come down. I might come down on. I might come down later on and show you girls how to sell this commodity if my daddy wants me to, Connie yelled. If my daddy wants me to, Connie yelled happily. Earl pulled up in front of a bar and parked between two Cadillacs. Girls stood out in the street in front of the bar. Every time a young Negro male would stop his car, one of the girls would yell, "Pull on up, honey, lest you spend the cash. If not, keep on riding, baby." You bitches act like you own the goddamn street, one of the young males yelled back. You blocking the action, fool, one girl yelled as she walked away. You don't want to do nothing but bullshit, and I ain't got the time. Hey, honey, she called to a passing car with two white men in it. Turn the corner, sweetie. Earl and Connie walked into the bar. She clung to his arm possessively. Earl waved to the barmaid. Give all the gamers a drink, baby, and let them know who they're drinking with. Yes, sir, Mr. Earl, and I know you want a bottle, and I know you want a bottle of champagne for you and your lady, the barmaid replied. Out of Earl's vision, Faye watched Connie and Earl with an unwholesome fascination. The more she watched, the more furious she became. In her alcoholic condition, it was inconceivable for her to imagine Earl picking himself back up. For the past weeks, she had appreciated the spectacle of Earl staggering down the streets drunk. Frequently, she had searched the bars just to get a glimpse of him drunk. The sight of him, now fully in control again, was too much, and she stalked from the bar with death in her heart. Sister moved up and down the bar, pouring drinks happily. She liked Earl and was glad to see him looking like he used to. She popped another bottle of champagne for the couple. I don't know what it is, Connie, but it seems like you do something for this man. Connie laughed. Earl pulled her towards him and kissed her slowly. This was the beginning. He had had his moment of weakness, and from here on out, he would take care of business. Tomorrow, he would stop at the restaurant and talk to Brenda. It shouldn't take too long to turn her out. The quickest way would be to trick her out there. His best bet would be to use the white bellboy, Jack. Give him $100 to trick with the girl, and he'd do just that. Get somebody else, and they would try giving the girl less than that. He pictured her in his mind. Once she got 100 for turning the trick, she'd be hooked. He was sure of it. Connie put her arms around his neck and kissed him passionately. When she opened her eyes, she saw Faye staggering through the tables in their direction. Apprehension gripped her heart. Faye was clutching something tightly in her hand as she came towards them. Honey! Connie screamed loudly in his ear. Earl wheeled around on his stool. The fear in her voice warned him. He saw Faye, and he saw the gun she held in her hand. He jumped away from the bar, scared something might happen to Connie. Instead of moving towards the drunken woman, he had moved sideways, and that split second cost him. As Faye brought the gun up, Earl dropped his head and charged her. It was his only chance. The explosion was loud. But he never heard it. Her first shot tore Her first shot tore the top of his head off. Her second one hit him in the face, and he was tossed violently back. The screams of the women never reached him as he fell to the floor. God damn! Someone cried loudly as the bar patrons gathered round. But Connie was beyond hearing. She sat down on the floor and held Earl's bloody head. It was over, she knew, but it would take quite a while. A trip to a mental hospital and back before she would be able to accept this night's work. Wow, that was it. Wow, that was it. She's a leash. Wow. Wow. Shocking story. 808's ears are blessed with the voice on once again. Hello, Boom. 808's in the house. These clowns crazy as fuck. Remember reading this book in high school? Have you read Dope Fiend yet? New subscriber. Yes, I have Dope Fiend available, and I'm going to also remaster that one for an entire audiobook collection. So, yes, it's available now, but it's in volumes, so you have to, finish one volume and go to the next volume in order to see all the volumes to finish the book. Now, pretty sure I'm going to put them all together after remaster them and then smash them together for a nice little 6-hour, 7-hour presentation. Coming soon. I'm trying to work as hard as possible for you all. But folks, you already know. And yeah, I'm going to have to say, Donald Goines books are cautionary tales. These books do not glorify the crime and bullshit that happens on in the ghetto. And come on, I mean, why would anyone glorify what goes on in these books? Good question, ain't it? But with that being said, y'all, I'm gonna say goodnight, and I will see you with another book real soon. Real soon, I promise. Won't take too long. Until then, stay sexy. It belongs to you. Stay sexy. It becomes you. Peace.